This is Matt Graham with the MBS Live Market Update. Last week brought a few pieces of economic data and a few Fed speeches that ended up moving the market. Unfortunately, it was not the kind of movement that we generally like, but at the very least, it wasn't the level of movement associated with the biggest ticket reports, such as the jobs report and CPI, or a Fed announcement for that matter. But retail sales was the big to-do on Wednesday morning. It came in at 0.6 versus 0.4 forecast. That is a pretty big number. Some would point out that it is made bigger recently in general by inflation. The headline retail sales figure does not adjust for inflation. So if inflation is running at 0.3% month over month, and we have 0.6 retail sales, it's more like a 0.3 reading, all other things being equal. Even that would be a good showing for an economy that is supposed to be teetering on the edge of recession, according to some people. I don't have a strong opinion on whether that is in the cards, but I do know that the bond market is willing to trade economic data, and it did that on Wednesday morning. But it did that on Tuesday morning as well, and that was a result of a speech from Fed's Chris Waller. This was something that was relatively anticipated going into the week. There was some speculation that he was going to say something that would inform the Fed's policy path going forward. This would either have to do with the pace of rate hikes or with the notion of tapering quantitative tightening, which is the Fed's current game plan of reducing its balance sheet holdings, thus effectively buying fewer MBS and treasuries. He didn't address the quantitative tightening tapering too much, but he did, I wouldn't say walk back, but he presented his rate cut outlook in a little bit of a more hawkish way than previously. Recall, Waller was the guy who had said they were looking for cracks in the economy, and those cracks had shown up, and now it was time to consider rate cuts in 2024. This was all the way back in October or November, more than a month ago at any event. And his comments at that time were sort of in the vanguard of dovishness for the Fed. Now we had a day where the market was looking forward to Waller giving some sort of sneak peek at the next iteration of the Fed's messaging. And if this is any indication, then we're going to see a Fed that is doing something fairly logical, which is to push back on a very big, aggressive rally that took place in November and December. In other words, rates and yields dropped more than 1% between the beginning of November and mid-December. And if that pace were to continue, it might be counterproductive to the Fed's goals. And it makes sense for all parties involved to sort of let that stimulative effect of the rate drop take effect before letting the market do something that creates a little bit too much stimulus. And Waller's comments certainly did not do that single-handedly, but they did create a bit of weakness on that morning, pushing yields from just under 4% to closer to 4.1 by the afternoon. And then things just continued to drift in a very linear fashion for the rest of the week. In fact, retail sales didn't even have a really obvious impact compared to Waller's comments and the Tuesday morning market movement. In the rest of the week, there was some additional economic data. Housing starts, not really remarkable. Jobless claims came in much lower than expected, the lowest in more than a year, and more evidence that the labor market is not showing enough distress for the Fed to care too much. At this point, we're in the Fed's blackout period ahead of the next Fed announcement, which is on January 31st. So that leaves the market to guess at what they might be thinking ahead of that. Really, we're not in a position to know whether they're going to cut rates at the March meeting. Certainly, it doesn't seem like it's even a remote possibility for January, even though that had been on the table, according to some, at some points. But really, we're just considering the March meeting as potentially the first rate cut, and that's going to depend heavily on the next jobs report and CPI report. We'll get two of them between now and that March Fed announcement. So in terms of the trend, rates have pulled up off the lows, but are really in a very mild correction as far as corrections go right now. Most of the big rally of the past 2 months is still intact, and we're just waiting on economic data to give us a cue on the next major movement. That's going to do it for this week. Back to you.